Magnifying Inclusive Philanthropy. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day from the fundraising school, and I'm joined today by Miguel Lopez. Miguel is Senior Manager of Development at the San Diego Foundation, where he also has designed, developed, and launched the El Camino Fund. And Miguel, what a delight to have you with us on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share more about San Diego Foundation and our new El Camino Fund to support and strengthen our Latino communities.
So what is the El Camino Fund, and how does this fit in with the broader strategy of the San Diego Foundation?
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. That's a really great question. So I'll take it a step back and share a little bit about our why in creating this fund and my own personal why in moving this fund forward at San Diego Foundation. I'm a first-generation Mexican-American, born and raised in San Diego. And there were a lot of challenges and opportunities that I had growing up here in San Diego County from two really great, hardworking parents that did the best that they could, but also didn't have all the knowledge and education and tools to be able to potentially advance maybe economically in other ways or learn more sophisticated financial investment strategies. So that is my why in bringing this fund forward at San Diego Foundation. And our why at San Diego Foundation developing this fund is because we believe in strengthening our Latino community here in San Diego. We know that San Diego County is made up of 1.1 million Latino residents. And we also know that there is a wealth gap within the Latino community and other wealth groups. There is research done through the Federal Reserve that indicates Latino net worth is about $61,600 compared to white non-Hispanic households who have an average net worth of $285,000. So using this knowledge and this data, the population within San Diego County, and aligning with San Diego's Foundation's strategy to be an inclusive organization that meets the needs of communities where they are, our organization created El Camino Fund and invested $5 million, is going to invest $5 million over the next 5 years to strengthen our community's economic mobility.
So what is the El Camino Fund, and how are you reaching donors to include them in this effort?
Yeah, thank you so much. So it is such an interesting initiative, and it's an interesting question because we're talking about, what is El Camino Fund? What is the purpose of El Camino Fund? And the second question is, how are we reaching donors? Specifically for us, looking at Latino donors. That was the original intention of this fund when we first created it. And, of course, that intention has evolved. But the original intention was, how do we engage Latinos in charitable giving at San Diego Foundation, a community that was often overlooked as it relates to giving versus being recipients of aid. So we realized that was a narrative change that we needed to make internally first at San Diego Foundation within our own perspective, and also a narrative change that we wanted to, advocate for the community when designing this fund. And since then, the evolution of the fund has, it's taken it to a different level where we want to strengthen economic mobility and wealth generation for Latino communities. But really, how we wish to engage Latino donors in this initiative is prior to launching the Latino Fund, I went on a feasibility study, right? I went to Latino community leaders, Latinos, Latinas, people that were very visible in the community, board members, nonprofit leaders, business leaders. And I asked, what are your perceptions of San Diego Foundation? What has San Diego Foundation done for the community in the past? And how close do you feel to San Diego Foundation? And I received many comments, some of them being good comments, many of them being neutral, others being negative. But some of the common themes that I received from Latino donors include, we know of San Diego Foundation, but we know it's an exclusive organization. Or one of my favorite stories is meeting with a Latina who is very involved in many community organizations. She's a donor. She's connected. She said, Miguel, I've never been invited to be a donor at San Diego Foundation. And that's a story that I still remember to this day that I share with many of our prospects and many of our donors. in that look at where our community was at many years ago, feeling excluded from our organization. And all it's taken, within other touch points is for somebody to come and ask, how do you feel about our organization? And would you like to be a part of the transformation of our organization? But by sharing that story, not just through El Camino Fund and the investment that San Diego Foundation is making, but through our other initiatives like scholarships that support Latino students, et cetera. And how do we tell that story a little bit better? Right? How do we tell that story a little bit better to build that trust with community? So it's a journey that we're taking to get to know people a little bit better, and to take time to get to know people and their needs, all while utilizing the vision of El Camino Fund to increase economic mobility and generational wealth for our local community.
Thoughtful, considerate, others focused, inclusive. And the other word that came to mind, Miguel, as you were describing the why, is trust. Fundraising happens at the speed of trust for all of us. How has that process been for you as you had to make new introductions and build new roadways for this predominant demographic in San Diego County into one of the leading community foundations in America, the San Diego Foundation? What has that journey been like for you as you've sought to establish trust with Latino donors?
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. And that's a really great question, because when I first started in this process, it felt like a very daunting task, right? I'm a 33-year-old professional. I don't know what that means, right? But I'm still growing and building my network of trusted people within my community. And so looking at, how am I going to start building trust with a network that I don't even have yet? Right? How am I going to lean into people where I'm still exploring, who are those key people? Who are those trusted messengers that are going to be able to support me in building more San Diego Foundation awareness and trust in the community? But over time, as I have met individually with people, I have learned that people want to help and people want to be involved. People want to be seen and be heard. So my approach throughout this process was to lean on, well, who do I know first? Right? Who within our network at San Diego Foundation, who does our CEO know, who is on our board, and who can start being that trusted messenger that already has a great relationship with San Diego Foundation, that can share that message with people in their network, where I can start having dialogue and start building that trust with folks. And it's been initially a very individualized approach in getting to know people. Trust, like you say, it comes in time. And I need to be able to put in that time to meet with people individually and just create space to listen and to hear people and what they think, right? And I think through that process, we're able to create more awareness, but I'm essentially creating other messengers out in the community to now have more goodwill with San Diego Foundation, because they understand, right, the investment, but also past investments of what we have done. So it's been a slow process in generating that buzz. And when I say slow, I say it because I'm also a very fast-paced person. So I think, this is supposed to happen right away. But over the last year and a half, Bill, it's just, for me, it's been such a great journey to see, donors come. I'm receiving unsolicited donations from folks and supporting El Camino Fund. I'm receiving, LinkedIn messages or emails from people wanting to connect and learn more about this initiative. So for me, that's one of my sources of inspiration, knowing that I'm a fast-paced person. I like seeing results right away. But over time, receiving these unsolicited, comments or positive affirmations about the work being done at San Diego Foundation through El Camino Fund and other initiatives, I'm learning that, there's trust being developed through our Latino community. So definitely a slow but very healthy process.
Miguel, what is the mechanic? What are the mechanics of the El Camino Fund? Is this one pooled fund? Is it one donor advised fund? Is it more like a giving circle? How would you describe mechanically how the fund has been established?
Yeah, it's a community-led initiative supported by San Diego Foundation through a pooled philanthropy approach. So the annual approach of El Camino Fund is we have a group of 5 El Camino Fund Leadership Council members. Now, this is a group of 5 Latino, Latina community leaders who support San Diego Foundation in a volunteer capacity. These folks bring their time, talent, treasure, and they advise San Diego Foundation on the most optimal use of the funds. We're really leaning into a community-led approach while San Diego Foundation provides operational infrastructure. We support meetings, we provide framework, documentation, et cetera, for these folks to be able to make informed decisions on the grants. And this is an annual competitive grant making cycle. So we have, under the umbrella of economic mobility and financial mobility, our 4 focus areas in its inaugural year were home ownership, workforce development, particularly upskilling and reskilling adults. We also had a financial education focus area where we wanted to teach adults more sophisticated financial strategies, aside from putting money in the savings account, more along the lines of retirement plans, which we identified was a gap through research that we conducted. And the last being entrepreneurship, using information from the Latino Business Action Network. I believe that's through Stanford, and understanding that Latinos are the fastest growing segment of small business entrepreneurs throughout the nation.
Wonderful goals, wonderful focus, guided by that advisory council. And Miguel, I know you've been working on this for many, many years, and now the fund has gone public in your first grant cycle. What impact is the fund having, and what longer term impact do you want the fund to have?
Yeah, thank you so much. So under the umbrella of economic mobility, upskilling and reskilling our adults, and making sure that folks have a pathway to achieve higher incomes and build their assets, some of the accomplishments that we had in the first year of El Camino Fund, for example, was a grant to an organization called Escondido Education Compact. And they were awarded $100,000 in support of a workforce readiness program that uses a culturally competent curriculum with trauma-informed restorative practices. Another program that I found very exciting, innovative, and in its first year is through Manada San Diego, that supports their Latino Upward Mobility Initiative, LUMI for short. And it assists adults in reskilling and upskilling to attain higher paying jobs. So we're hoping to change the trajectory of families, individuals in receiving higher incomes, right? And becoming more sophisticated in how they use their dollars. And for many of these adults who have students, to take the burden off the students too, to focus on education in school and not focus on supporting, their family as they grow, which is a value that's very important to Latinos. We're such a nuclear culture, right, that we like to support each other, but to be able to provide more pathway and independence for families to better support themselves and in turn support their students and the next generation of leaders.
Miguel, it's a wonderful impact that you are having. You're working on a daily basis to build and grow the El Camino Fund. And I also know that you're a leader and you're looking long term. In addition to growing the fund and magnifying the impact that you just described, do you hope the fund has an impact on the San Diego Foundation? Do the folks from the council become more active in other parts of the foundation? Do these donors become engaged in other activities of the foundation? Again, as we think about diversifying and equitable generosity and inclusive philanthropy, what are some of your thoughts in what could be happening at the foundation because of the growth of the El Camino Fund?
Thank you, Bill. And I'll quote my boss, Cami Matson. She's our senior director of philanthropic strategy. She coined this term, and I use this term often, is, our overall strategy with El Camino Fund is to make San Diego Foundation a culturally relevant organization for our Latino community. And we hope El Camino Fund to be a catalyst for that. We've been very blessed at San Diego Foundation with our president and CEO, Mark Stewart, whose primary purpose is to make sure that we are embedded in the community and that we are reflective of the communities that we serve. So through Mark's efforts, our board is the most reflective of San Diego County as it stands right now. And, that top-down approach to centering inclusivity, diversity, and equity, pours down throughout San Diego Foundation. And how I want El Camino Fund to influence San Diego Foundation, especially in our grant-making practices, is to prioritize Latinos' lived experiences through our many grant-making programs. Our education program, our environment program, our climate program, which some of these programs already do. And, it's how do we build more intention in tracking this information, making sure that we are meeting the community where they're at. And in hopes of some of these donors through El Camino Fund to become more involved in San Diego Foundation, to be advocates for some of our larger campaigns and strategies to inform, based on their lived experiences and where we can make the most impact, utilizing that expertise and that knowledge.
Top staff leadership, top board leadership that endeavor to reflect the best of belonging and justice on these important issues, led by a dynamic professional in Miguel Lopez, who is doing the daily work of building the trust and building the fund. Miguel, what advice do you have, whether it's for community foundations or any nonprofit that is out there fundraising, that is sincere about wanting to reach out to marginalized, non-white, non-traditional, pick a phrase, I'll agree with you, population to be more diverse, equitable, and inclusive in their fundraising?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm such a risk taker, and in this instance with El Camino Fund, I shied away from risk. I went into such a methodical process of understanding: am I going to do things correctly, or am I going to do things incorrectly? And I had an analysis paralysis moment when I realized I was overcomplicating things. And I realized all people want is to be heard like people and like humans, not treated any differently. And if we can take that approach and lean into this human-centered approach, where we're really trying to engage and learn from these communities that we haven't engaged before, I think we're going to be very surprised that folks are willing to open up. Folks are willing to share experience and also be vulnerable in how they feel about our organization. So I'd say, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I think we're all very professional in the sense that we can do our homework. We can listen to all these case studies. We can talk to other leaders in the space doing this work and learn best practices, but we're going to find our unique way of doing things. And that's only done through trial and error and understanding and learning as we are with the community.
The wisdom and learning shared with us today are affirmed in Diverse Philanthropy, a book by our colleague Lilia Wagner. It's an AFP award-winning book. Lily has traveled to nearly 100 countries around the world and summarized her approach to diversity and philanthropy. And guess what? She says, start where you are with who you know and do the best you can, as Miguel has told us today. Be willing to ask. Be willing to admit what you don't know. Listen first, second, and third before coming to explain. And that is a book that is central to our leadership curriculum at the Fundraising School. That leadership curriculum among the 24 public courses that we offer, leading to 4 different certificates. We can also customize our training specifically for your nonprofit, your association, your region, either online or in person, including the wonderful donated space we have from the San Diego Foundation. We have quarterly webinars and, of course, these weekly podcasts, and all of our knowledge is gathered in our textbook, Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, the book now out in its 5th edition. All this information is available online at go.iu.edu/TFRS for the Fundraising School. Miguel Lopez, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your heart. You talked about your donors inspiring you. You have inspired us. Thanks so much for being with us on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
Thank you so much, Bill.
And the podcast produced by my colleagues, Mike Anthony and Jennifer Boffman. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. Now you are more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.